How much time do we spend concerned, worried, thinking about what others think about us? How much time, how much space gets rented, as they say, in your head around this? Inquiring with people in sessions is illuminating because you can literally see what's going on is around what other people think about me. Take, for example, well, one area that it comes up in is when someone is still carrying around the judgments of their mother or father. So let's say they picked up this story, I'm not good enough, and they got that essentially from interpreting a relationship with mom or dad or both, is that these judgments of others, we won't put them on. If you'll just put them on and feel what you have to feel, you can move right through that. And in the end, it won't matter what people are thinking or saying about you. So if you really want this deep freedom, just listen to me for a second. If you catch on to what I'm saying, it cuts like a knife because this what I'm about to show you sort of gets to shadows and to ego both. Just sit here for a second and put up people around you. People around you that are saying things about you or thinking things about you, negative things, judging you, pressuring you. Put those people up and look from awareness and just at their faces, the presence of each one. These are actually just images in your awareness, but looking at all of them, pick one thing that one of them is thinking about you, some negative thing. So let's say some person called me a narcissist. Look at how much energy you put into defending that. I'm not a narcissist. I can't believe she thinks that. Well, she's the narcissist. She has those tendencies. So much energy. All the energy gets spent defending and attacking when it's so much more liberating to just take that on and own it. Let it be on your side. So I'm a narcissist. Now, you don't put that on your side just to start believing that and carrying that around. Pull the words up. So you're taking the judgment from someone else, which is like in second or third person. And what are you going to do with that? Somebody else's judgment, right? But these judgments only matter to the extent we internalize them. So the defense and attack comes from I'm internalizing this in some way. I don't want to be this. I don't want to feel this. And maybe even a belief that maybe I am this. See, all that goes on. Because often we defend what we know to be true on some. So, but we're just doing everything we can to avoid the feeling that we might have to feel if we saw ourselves as a narcissist or as something else that someone else is saying. So here's how the inquiry goes. So you pick somebody out, they're calling you, it could be anything. They're calling you self centered, they're calling you greedy, they're calling you whatever. We'll use narcissist. When the judgment is coming from someone else, the sense of separation is already there. So you're defending and attacking, you're defending the self against the other, right? Painful. What if you just take those words and say, I'm a narcissist, but you observe them directly from awareness? And you let that feeling or those sensations arise, the ones that feel very uncomfortable, that go along with this thought. You're just sitting there and you're letting the feel, you're not squirming out of it anymore. See, all the defense and attacking is trying to squirm out of this feeling to avoid having to feel this. But what if you just saw the words and just let the feeling rise? And as it arises, you just stay witnessing the words. So you're awake to this. You've put it on your side, but you're not identifying with it. You're not just going into the mind and saying, okay, I'm a narcissist now. And you can do that. That's shadow work. You can carry it around and think about it for a while. I'm a narcissist. But in the end, the narcissist thought is really only important because it brings up a certain feeling or sensation. So can't you just sit with it? I'm a narcissist or whatever the thought is. Just be with it and witness and stay awake to it. And while you're awake to it, letting the feeling or sensation just come up with that. And if you stay with it and stay with it, the thought, as these feelings and sensations move, come up, what happens is after a while of just sitting and looking at the thought and feeling everything that comes with it, the thought starts to get weaker. It starts to seem less real, more like words. And now you just stay with it. Even if it just seems like words at a certain point, if there's still energy with it, just stay with it. The power of witnessing that. And then in witnessing that, you get to feel everything that you didn't want to feel. So once you felt everything and that energy just moves through and the words are either gone or they're just empty, then there's no energy of defense and attack that's needed anymore. All of that was coming from trying to avoid feeling something. And isn't that like that a lot? Now go throughout your day and people, let's say people are criticizing you. Like, Mary, you're totally unprofessional at work. Mary, someone called Mary. Someone says you're very unprofessional. And then Mary's like, no, I'm not, and goes to the boss, tries to prove it. I want you to tell this coworker that I am professional. I get my job done. How dare he? All that energy. I understand not wanting to be seen a certain way. But how many years on earth can you spend defending and attacking these things before you recognize that there's a simple answer to this? Bring that word in front of you as awareness. I'm unprofessional, and stop squirming. Because if it's ultimately not you, it's going to be harmless in the end. There's not going to be any harm done here by just being with it. And in fact, there's freedom. So I'm unprofessional, and here comes that energy, like, feel it, let it come. That's that energy that wants to defend and attack, but now you're just resting with it and staying awake to the thought because it's the thought that brings that feeling with it, that sensation. So staying awake to it allows that feeling or sensation to fully bubble up. And then at some point, though, every wave of energy starts to subside. All energies are like waves. So you just, with the thought, the wave sort of peaks, the energy, and then starts to subside. Stay with it as it subsides, the energy, witnessing the thought. And at some point, the thought, I'm professional, feels like nothing. Like there's nothing to it. You may have to repeat that a couple times on one word or one label. But just imagine going throughout your day today, and that's how you're now going to relate to everything that feels adversarial. Imagine if you're walking, you're in your house, and like your spouse or someone you live with is kind of constantly nagging you or nagging you about something. Like you don't do the dishwashing, you don't do the dishwasher right, anything. Look at how much defense comes up. Saying, yes, I do it right, I do it my way, and we're arguing. Fine, you can do that. What would be more skillful is just to say, look at the words, I don't do the dishwashing right. Not to analyze it, not to argue with it, not to try to find out who's right, just to sit with the thought, awake to the thought, I don't do the dishes right. So you're awake to it, you're seeing it. And then as you see it, another question you can ask is, are these words, I don't do the dishwasher right, are those words the awareness that's looking? Because this is really a question of identity, isn't it? Who are you? What are you? So you can ask that, are these words the awareness that's looking? And if you can see they're not, there's something appearing to awareness, and here's the awareness that's looking, so to speak. Stand as that after you ask that question and just be with that now. Again, letting the feeling be felt, the sensation. Stay with that thought until it naturally falls away, along with the energy. This would take away many of your problems very quickly. Very quickly, if you would actually do this practice, like just try it today. On anything coming from the apparent outside that you feel defensive about, in shadow work, they sometimes say we each have Hitler and Gandhi within us, and I think this is the thing that people miss is we want to just have certain traits. We want to own certain traits, but not other traits. We don't want to own the traits that are ugly. We don't want to have anything to do with certain traits. We would rather just be this kind of person that doesn't have these traits or doesn't have this. But the freedom is in bringing everything in, everything, everything that you're seeing in your external world that's coming at you, any judgments, any pressure, pull it right up to you and witness it and own it. Because in the end, there's this thing then that yes, we have it all within us, all of these things, and then we stop trying to pretend like, for example, we're just this kind of person. We're just a good, nice person over here. That's all we are. Like that there isn't any unprofessionalism or narcissism or whatever else, and we just keep pushing those things away, all these bad things. And then guess what? Everybody else gets to show up to remind us of what we've pushed away. Is perfect. So whatever I've disowned in my experience and said I don't have this, that's the thing that I'm going to get defensive about. Own it completely, everything, and see that you have all these in within you, and then you're not defending anything anymore. You're just simply owning everything, feeling everything. Everything falls away, and then you stop seeing people out there that are against you. You stop seeing them because all those people that were against you, that you perceived against you, were really just reminding you of something that you are avoiding, rejecting. Everyone is your teacher. Such a cliche, but you can really see it with this particular inquiry because you'll continue to get into conflict and defense and attack mode as long as you're not owning something. So as long as you're not owning something and incorporating that and seeing that as an aspect of consciousness also, you'll be pushing it away and then others will just keep showing up. So if you're on social media a lot and you keep finding people attacking you, I'm not saying blame the victim here, but those people will continue to do that until you start owning what it is they're saying. Once you start owning what they're saying, you'll lose interest in those conversations because those conversations are just there to help you own it. Once you own it, there's nothing there for you and you stop seeing those people. Even if they still show up, you don't care. You're not invested in it. You don't have a dog in the fight anymore. Imagine how liberating that would be if you stop trying to be this kind of person or that kind of person and you simply own everything that comes to you externally. When I say own, I don't mean put it on and believe it. So I don't mean start piling on a bunch of stories like, oh, I'm a narcissist, I'm self centered, I'm greedy, but I'm also a good person and a nice person. Much more clarity than that. Because once you own something and see that it's not you, you don't even have to go back there. So you stop having to go back to these labels for anything, including the labels of good person or nice person or spiritual. Those become less interesting the more you own the so-called negative projections towards you or the negative pressure towards you. You're only able to hold up the facade of being good or nice or something if you're pushing that away. That's the duality, separation. It, the more you see it, guys, the more you see how it's a perfect design here. This is a perfect design. People will ask me, like, why do we suffer so much? Why do we have an ego? Well, I don't know all the answers to that, but if you'll take a look at what's going on, it's perfectly designed for you to wake up. But you have to be paying attention in a certain way. If your attention constantly goes to believing something about yourself and pushing something away, you're not going to see this. If you start welcoming, like go throughout today, just welcome whoever wants to throw some shit at you. I mean, even like if you're in a parking lot and someone cuts you off, just something like that. Look at the person in your mind's eye. What do you think the person is thinking about you? See how we take that on? It's like, well, she thinks I'm a pushover. How dare she just cut out in front of me? All that energy. Why not just say, I'm a pushover? Because it's something that you're believing. Regardless of whether that person said or thought that, it's coming up for you, but you're pushing it away. Like, I'm not a pushover. How dare she? I'm a pushover. Awake to it. Feel that until it becomes empty, falls away. Then you don't, all of your argument with that person was really an argument with yourself. See that? So all of your arguments with other people are arguments with self. That doesn't mean don't go out and I'm not, it's not a prescription for behavior like behave, be nice, it's all you, don't do anything. No, I'm saying go live life, like get in the mess of it because it all teaches you. Even like being in the parking lot and in that moment where you just lose your cool and you go off on somebody, teaching moment. It's there to wake you up. Not teaching moment, but you know what I mean. A moment of owning and integrating, waking up from that. When you start to look closely at what's going on, you can see that everybody who's showing up, again, negatively judging you or anything like that is an opportunity in this way to wake up. And then if you look at it from a different angle, the boomerang is that almost everybody that you're entangled with in some way also mirrors back a deficiency story. Perfect design. Because then all you have to do is look at the relationships that are already going on in your life where you're getting triggered. So there's different ways, different angles at it. Someone's triggering you. The one thing you can do is, as I said, is take what they're saying, own it from awareness, see through it. But another thing is to determine what deficiency story are they hitting here? So and so is saying this. Ah, that means I'm being disrespected. Be with that. I'm being disrespected. Inquire into it. With reverse inquiry, you can look at the person and say, he's totally respecting me. I'm totally respected. No, you're not. And here comes the thing you don't want to see. These feelings and thoughts that you were just trying to avoid, but here they come now. These thoughts of an identity of someone who's not respected. Be with each one of them. It's a perfect design if you'll just pay attention. If we pay attention to what life is always showing us every day, it's giving us everything we need to wake up. There's just different pockets of resistance against this, different areas and ways of resisting it. One of the great things about the design is that when you resist this, you just suffer more. So if someone is saying something about me and I'm taking that on, I'm defending and attacking, there's suffering in that, up to and including illness and chronic pain, but if not that, emotional suffering, trauma resurfacing. So the pain is pulling you back into the scene. See, how many times are you going to get tripped up into this pain body, before you see what you really need to do is now own that, wake up from that. Stop going at someone as if they're a separate person. Integrate all of that, move beyond the separation. Now, I say that, but through the years, I've allowed myself to get tripped up into that for sure. With the anger repression, the anger coming up, I needed to allow myself to take on some of the stuff in the relationships close to me because the anger needed to come up. But even as the anger came up, the same seeing arose, which is all that energy of anger is there because I'm still not owning something, still resisting, avoiding feeling something. It's all perfect. So perfect. And as I've said before, what's going on in the world right now is perfect for each of us to wake up. It's always happening like that. Whatever's going on in the world stage is a reflection of our consciousness. How we're interpreting it is a reflection of our traumas, our conceptual frameworks, our childhood development, ego development, all of it constantly mirrored back to us. So when things are happening in the world, turn on the TV, you can get really lost in the notion that there's this separate world out there happening just independent of you. And that's when the struggle comes up and you start fighting the world and arguing and suffering, yelling at the TV, getting angry all the time, upset, not recognizing that everything that you're seeing on the TV and in the world is an opportunity to show you what's being mirrored back. Like literally, the things that you hate on TV are your teachers. I can't think of a specific example right now. Let me see if I can sit with one that makes it obvious. Well, the whole thing about government, like people have a valid argument there that if government takes over our lives and controls our lives too much, that we need to stand up and make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, fine. But if you look a little bit deeper, you'll see that what you're perceiving as government is very similar to the energy, for example, of one of your parents or something in your past where they were imposing something on you and making you feel small or making you feel powerless or something like that. And then lo and behold, here comes something in your current world that makes you feel the same way, reflects back the same thing. So, in your arguments to say you're just standing on principle or you're just an activist for the betterment of all, you really have to see this other piece of it, which is that really this is all about you on one level, that you're replaying your traumas. They're being played out on the world stage. And you're either being caught up in that and you believe all that's happening independent of you, or you start seeing that how I interpret what's going on in the world has everything to do with what I'm thinking and feeling, the conditioning that I carry. This is why two people could be sitting next to each other and see a different Donald Trump, for example, or a different Joe Biden or whatever is going on out there and have a completely different take on it. Is because what's different among the two different people, apparently the same things are going on out there, right? Donald Trump, Joe Biden comes for a press conference, says a few things. Two people interpret it completely differently because their conditioning is different, their traumas are different, their deficiency stories, and therefore how they see the world is going to be different. If it was all real and objective, then everybody would kind of see the same thing, but we're seeing different things because of how we're made up. We see what we are. We literally see what we are everywhere we go. We see what we're believing, the traumas, the programs. They're all playing themselves out for us. It's important to say because I can see people in pain these days. I mean, including physical pain. And then they're in the midst of this very stressful physical thing or something they're going through, illness. On top of that, they're very emotional about what's going on in the world because they care. But if they look closer, everything that's going on in the world is directly connected to the pain in some way. At the very least, it's stressing the pain out. But what you'll find is that a lot of times what you believe and think, your programs are actually one of the reasons that you have pain to begin with. Like it's the culprit. It's all connected. So we really, at this stage in the game, we can't say that the body is somehow connected from everything out there or the mind. It's all inseparably. It's not even connected. It's inseparable. They even discovered, I think, in science, even science with quantum physics, of how the inside and the outside are one. That we literally are inseparable. Everything's inseparable. So now it's time for you to see that in your experience. Stop relying on science. It's right here for you. But if you're treating the things that you're seeing in the world like the people that are criticizing you, or if you see them or the government that seems to be oppressing you, if you just believe all that without investigating how it's connected to what you believe, you'll suffer. And what's unfortunate about that is if you already have, for example, an illness or chronic pain, that suffering can take you deeper. Not seeing this can take you deeper into pain and suffering. It's interesting to work with people and to see how they make this dichotomy as if the suffering, the emotional stuff they're going through, or the physical pain or the illness is somehow divorced from their emotional life and the world that they see. And it isn't. But making that division creates a lot of pain because it feels hopeless, powerless, because it's like there's nothing I can do about my pain. And on top of that, the world is going crazy. But it's all connected. How do I know this? I see it in my own experience, but also working with people when they're up in arms about what's going on in the world. If we bring that back to what they believe, to their traumas, and then we go into looking at mom and dad or early experiences and start to unhook from the thoughts and feelings around those experiences, lo and behold, when they look back at the current world, they see it differently. It's quieter. Even when there's turmoil going on, you're not taken in by it. And people will say, isn't that a bypass? No, it's not. The bypass is not seeing this and continuing to believe in separation. That's the bypass. Your world falls apart. Your world, which is the world that you see as you go deep into inquiry. And that's the only world you can see. Your world made of your conditioning, your programming. I can just hear it now. People will say, but they're still doing it. The government's still doing that. I'm not saying you don't take action. I'm not saying you don't protect yourself. I'm not saying you don't have an opinion. You can still have the perspective. What I'm saying is that you're buying into separation. You're getting pulled into believing that the world is objective when it's a reflection of what you believe. And so in not seeing that, that's where the suffering is. You can see that and still take action. That's the thing that's hard for people to understand. Is, for example, someone who's seen through all of this might still go vote. It doesn't render you inept or impotent. There's just a clarity there. In other words, you're not getting tripped up over your own conditioning. You see things for how they are. That when something out there in the world bothers you, it's pointing back to something that you believe. And that's your work right there. Can you tell that this takes skill, though? Through the years, I think we've come to think, many of us, that just being in awareness will show it to us. But this stuff hides. Like, even living in awareness, you can get fooled into thinking that something out there has nothing to do with your conditioning. You can get fooled into that. But skillful inquiry will uproot it for you. Let me see if I can think of an example. I want to think of a good one here. I'm going blank. There's just quietness. Give me a second. Um, yes, here's a good one. My perception of bullies in the world. So this is a good exception, a good example. Growing up being bullied, then all of that was repressed and unconscious, and I didn't have a sense of how it was informing what I see in the world. Lo and behold, I kept started seeing bullies in my adult life. Insurance companies, the government, people in power, bullies, and I just thought they were out there. Like literally, what I was seeing was objective. I didn't make the connection that my consciousness had already been formed in a way that saw bullies and victims, bullies and the bullied. Like that was the division made up in my mind, and I was the bullied. I was the victim. So, of course, the victim is going to see the perpetrator. The consciousness of that victim will see perpetrator. And that's what I started seeing. And at first, it felt objective. It felt like, no, they really are a bully. They're bullying me. And I feel that. It was very painful at first, getting tripped up into that. And then, but then going in. So there's where inquiry comes in, right there. Because to your awareness, just seeing something, it still feels like there's a bully out there until you start asking questions. For example, one simple question to start with is, there's a bully there. What does the bully, image of the bully mean about me? Ah, I'm small. Observe that. See how it's about you. This is what you believe. I'm powerless. Keep mining things out. What else does a bully image mean in your consciousness? I'm oppressed. I don't trust people. Let that be. They're out to get me. Let that be. I don't feel safe. Let that be. You're pulling apart everything that you've unconsciously embedded into the bully appearance. And then as you observe all these things and the programs get taken out of it, suddenly that thing doesn't look like a bully in the same way. Something shifts. In the process of looking like that, you're deconstructing not just the idea of a bully separate, but also who you're taking yourself to be there. The deficiency story or the other identity gets seen in that, and then the separation goes away. So, what that means is that I stop seeing bullies. Does that mean that there isn't some energy out there bullying other people? I have no idea. I'm just saying I stopped seeing them. So, when someone does something now that looks like it's bullying behavior, it doesn't hit me emotionally. I can't say that it wouldn't. I'm not saying that there might not be some scenario that triggers me. I can't say that. But by and large, I just stopped seeing bullies because I stopped seeing myself as the victim of that. Again, there's an example of how our early childhood conditioning, trauma, deficiency stories inform completely what we see in our world. The difficulty people have is getting over this hump of letting go of this notion of these things out there that seem objective. Because in letting go of that, you're deconstructing yourself. It's like even the fear of death can feel threatening. Even if it's very painful what you see in the world, it can be super scary to start deconstructing that world because that's when you go. Because you and the world are inseparable. So you start questioning things out there, suddenly the identities here start falling away, and that's the end of your world. So you can see how that would be threatening. But I would just say a gentle perseverance, a gentle warrior like perseverance through these scenarios where you stop. And in the midst of wanting to get pulled back into that separation with whatever's out there, that is the moment right there when if you can turn towards it and inquire, there's an opening. Here's something interesting. With our training program, we have this where people write out their current triggers. And so anything in the world that's triggering them, neighbor, coworker, spouse, gets written down. And then we have this column called the gap. So the gap is how long it takes you from the time that you're triggered until you begin to look at it and see it for what it is through inquiry or awareness. And we say that the longer the gap, the longer it takes you to look at it, the more core that is to your identity. So notice how when you're upset with things going on in the world, how long it takes you to really sit down and pull that back to your side and start looking at it. That gap, that how long it takes you shows you that whatever is operating there is probably a core identity. That because the resistance comes up around core identities. So if you can imagine the bullying scenario, when I see bullies out there, there was a gap because my consciousness, so to speak, wanted to continue to believe in that separation. So there's a bit of lag time between experiencing that bullying energy and actually coming down and skillfully looking at it. And in that gap, the belief got to continue, the separation got to continue, which means that identity wrapped up into that, I got to continue, so to speak, be that core identity. I'm unsafe, whatever that is. That got to continue on in the gap. This is why teachers will say that, yeah, they'll still get triggered, but they see it more quickly. With, in my language, just saying there's not much gap because they're already living in awareness and open to seeing things. So if a trigger comes up, they can see it more quickly and it falls apart. But with people who are very stuck in the ego consciousness, the gaps will be longer. So I think that's what the teachers are saying is just the gaps get shorter because your core identities, you're beginning to look at them and open to them. And therefore the gaps don't need to be as long when you're really looking at the core identities. And these core identities are really what shows up in your relationship to the world. And traumas contribute to core identities. The trauma of what happened to us becomes part of that identity. What would it be like if you took on this sort of gentle warrior like mentality or attitude about things, where each day, instead of just being tripped up on something that you think is out there or separation in some way, instead of just falling prey to that with long gaps, if you start to immediately, as soon as you see any trigger out there, is use some of the tools that I've said and go look at it quickly and see how much freedom and how freeing that is to look at it quickly, to be able to move through that. To me, that's where the rubber meets the road. Between those who are realizing and deepening in this, embodying this, and those who are getting stuck, is that the gaps are long. You're getting, here's another way of saying it, we're getting something out of our beliefs and our identities, utility. So those gaps involve utilities. It's like, why do I want to continue believing that I'm a victim? I must get something out of that. Because I'm noticing, if I notice that I stay in that, while I see bullies out there for a period of time, I stay in that. That's not happening for no reason. It's happening because I'm getting, seemingly getting something out of it. That's where the utility inquiry comes in. What do I get out of believing I'm a victim? Well, I get to stay in that identity that's familiar, be with that. In some way, this is how I stay safe because by being a victim, I get to keep an eye on who the bullies are. So believing I'm a victim keeps me hyper vigilant and safe. Protect myself. Observe that. Just let it be. No analysis. Do it again. These utilities are strong. Bring them back up. What else do I get about from seeing myself as a victim? You'll likely see some of the same ones come up. This is how you stay safe. This is how you protect yourself. This is how you survive. They're coming up repeatedly, persistently because they're about survival. So we don't believe these things in a vacuum. In other words, we believe them because they give something to us. And these utilities are persistently there. Like, oh no, you have to stay safe. You have to protect yourself. You have to continue to be a victim. All unconscious. But inquiry can pull it up. I would love to have a conversation started among people that come and watch these videos, just making comments in the comments section about the degree to which you're able to do this work each day instead of falling prey to the idea of separation, objective things out there. You're turning those around with the tools, seeing through these things and moving on. Like, share that with me because we can have a rich conversation here. It doesn't cost any money. Just share, comment on where you get stuck or your breakthroughs so that I can read those comments and we can go deeper into the discussion here. And lastly, someone asked, where do you get the tools? Where does one get the tools to do this work that you talk about on YouTube? KIO series, KIO. Go to Kiloby.com. This is how you learn the tools that I talk about every day. Kiloby.com. If you go into courses, at the top, the scroll down menu, you'll see courses as one of the options, and it'll say KIO. The KIO is a set of videos that explains this. All the videos are purely experiential. So whereas I get on YouTube and I give context and some explanation, most of those videos are just about the experience of using the tools. Once you have those tools in your experience and you come back to these videos, it'll be completely, they'll be much more dimensional for you. Without knowing the skills that I'm using and talking about, some of this stuff may feel like it's out of reach, or I don't really know how to get to what he's seeing. But once you pick up the tools, that's where these insights come in. So I encourage you to do that so that we can be on the same page as I talk about this stuff. All right, let's see if there's any comments before I jump off here. I don't think there is anything. Hmm. Anybody have any question before I go around this topic of readiness? Really, it's readiness, isn't it? It's like, when do we become ready? We, I, whatever. When does the readiness show up to begin looking at this stuff rather than falling into it, getting triggered by it? Or even if we get triggered by it, where's the readiness to look and see what that really is? Thoughts, feelings, sensations. Readiness is a word that doesn't, it's not about judging. It's not like, oh, you're not ready. It's more like using the word to own up within ourselves to where we still remain resistant and still wanting to buy into, even on an unconscious level, separation, still getting strong utilities behind it. And so the readiness may not be there. But when it shows up, it's powerful when it shows up in people. And when the pain gets great enough is often when it shows up. Because at that point in time, the pain becomes a driver. Oh, yes, Serena, I didn't want to say that, but she said without a lot of physical pain, she wouldn't have gone there. That's what I mean, is all the stuff that you hear me talking about, a lot of it comes from lots of physical pain and being almost like forced into inquiry to clean up some of these areas that were lingering. So physical pain and emotional pain can be good motivators. People ask me, do I have to be in a lot of pain though to have this kind of readiness to go deep into this? No, you don't. Some people have a desire for freedom, like a strong desire to know what's real, what's true. Let ride that curiosity, that drive to go deep into it, but also notice the pain. Because if you can feel where you're experiencing pain in your relationship to others, to the world, that pain is going to take you to the right places. I've talked about this so much, it literally takes us there. It shows up in the body, and then from there, we pull up the unconscious thoughts. So that's why pain is so helpful. Thanks, guys.